Hey, good morning, everyone. It's 10:30. Let's get started. Other than that rain, how's everybody doing today? All right, I like that. I like the thumbs up around the room. That's great. I'm excited to be here this morning. This is the second of 3 town halls. Today we get to focus on student success. I think that's a really inspiring topic for many of us. It's why we are in higher ed. Students brought us here. And that, I think, is always a good conversation to have about how we support our students. So today's town hall, structured similarly to all town halls. First, we're going to have an overview of kind of where we are and the why. Why is student success a strategic pillar? We'll revisit that topic. We have, just like we did in Town Hall 1, we have terrific panelists who will give us some updates. So hopefully you'll understand the why, and then you'll get some updates about what we're doing. And then we'll get into questions and answers. Just like Town Hall 1, I want to remind people and thank people for submitting questions already. We may not be able to answer specifically your question, but what I'm doing as moderator is trying to synthesize those, pull out the themes while we have our expert panel here to talk with campus about some of those questions that were on your mind. I want to assure you that if you asked or provided specific feedback in advance of today, we're taking that under advisement. It's part of the strategic planning process. So we don't want to disappoint people by not answering specific questions, but on the other hand, we don't have time to do that for everyone. But your thoughts are valued. I want to make sure everybody knew that. So the other thing is just what do we do with this? We have these town halls. Strategic planning is an iterative process here on campus. There will be other opportunities to weigh in, to hear your thoughts. You may have noticed in this morning's Newswire that Provost Martin will be having some coffees with faculty to hear your thoughts across all 3 areas. And you can look for other activities on campus. And we will report out along the way about how we're doing. So really, this is a good opportunity for our campus to hear from some terrific folks. I want to introduce you to our panelists. Of course, we have Chancellor Robinson. We have Provost Terry Martin joining us today. And then we have Trevor Francis, who is an Associate Vice Provost of Student Success. Suzanne McCray, Vice Provost for Enrollment Management and Dean of Admissions and Magician, who always keeps us strong in the admissions department. And there's some questions a bit about the cliff and how we might deal with that. Deb Korth, Director of Fulbright Student Services. Thank you for joining us. Also a teaching professor. Leslie Yingling, Associate Dean of Students, Associate Vice Chancellor for Diversity and Inclusion, Director of the Center for Multicultural and Diversity Education. Is there anything you don't do? You can answer that. Last but certainly not least, we have Adrian Gaines, Director of Engineering, One Stop College of Engineering. Really looking forward to hearing about that. So what I'd like to do is, again, have that overview of the why, and I'll turn it over to you, Chancellor.
Well, thank you, Margaret. Good morning, everyone. I mean, this to me is a very self-evident why. I mean, we were created as an institution to serve and support students in their aspirations for obtaining good quality education. And so for us to take a deeper dive into this arena it's appropriate. And we are, I think one of the benefits of our student success efforts today is that we've been working on building a better student success operation. So we're not starting from scratch. We're building on success. You can see that success in the graduation rates that we've achieved, and also in the retention rates that we've achieved for our freshman classes going into their sophomore years. So we know we have momentum, and we have many programs, both curricular and co-curricular programs in place to better serve students. So I'm excited about where we are, but like in every aspect of what we do, we are never satisfied. We're not going to be satisfied as long as there is a single student who hasn't achieved what he or she has set out to achieve from the very beginning. We're not going to be satisfied when there are students who graduate and don't find that employment that they're looking for and don't feel that they have the skill set necessary, which we believe that most of our students are very well prepared. We will not be satisfied as long as there are students who can't afford to be here, because affordability is a critical part of the student success effort. And so the why is simple. This is why we exist. And I'm so excited to see so many of you out here today. And I know we have many people who are listening in and looking in online. But I have to say, for you to endure the rain does suggest a real commitment to student success, because I know the rain is never pleasant. So thank you for being here this morning.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chancellor. Next up, we'll hear from Provost Martin, and then we'll also hear, again, some updates from Trevor Francis and Suzanne McCray. And then I have some questions for our other panelists before we're going to jump into our Q&A session today. So, Provost Martin, Academic Affairs, what's going on?
You know, when we started looking at student success more than 10 years ago, trying to really focus heavily on it, we were looking primarily at our 6-year graduation rates and our retention of our first-year students, primarily for our on-campus undergraduate students. What we've realized through this journey is there's, among many things I'm going to mention here, but we need to be looking at the retention and graduation rates of our online students, our graduate students. They're all part of what we're doing here. But we first focused on the undergraduates, and that's what started us. There were some reasons we started looking at that. We didn't feel like we were doing what we needed to be doing, and we've made some great strides, and we're going to talk about some of those things today. But when we, through this journey, not only do we realize the graduate students, undergraduate students, and the online students, but we need to be, from our data that we were looking at, we need to be looking at our first generation student, our students, our Pell eligible students, a variety of other niches and areas where we could meet the needs of those students, because many of them have different needs. And we need to be looking at what it is those students need to be successful. And as Charles said, it's not just the first year retention. It is the graduation, getting a job, or being prepared to go to graduate school. Those are the things all the way through is the student success. Through that, there's also the other areas we need to be addressing is mental health of our students, the internships that are along the way for the students, as I said, as well as the job opportunities. So all of these are pieces of student success that we have expanded beyond what we originally started, just looking at the first year retention and the graduation rates. And I've asked today Trevor to kind of update us a little bit on what we have been doing, and Suzanne a little bit on maybe on some of the things that she's doing that will help with retention and graduation.
Great. Thank you, Provost Martin. I'm really excited to hear you talk about expanding the lens beyond the undergrad. But I also know, Trevor, since I've been on campus, I've learned so much from you about what Provost Martin just said. What have we been doing? And so take us back over the history.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you all for being here to support Student Success Town Hall. The provost asked me to take a look at the past 10 years. What are the outcomes, some of the wins that we've had in terms of student success? I think one of the first things you'll notice nationally is just the rising complexity of analyzing what student success means. So EAB, for instance, provides a summary of 116 indicators you can explore that could be leading to gaps in your retention and graduation rates. So factors like sense of belonging on campus, impact of unmet financial need, the need to work while enrolled in school, access to transportation, and then student expectations of their own ability to succeed. And the list goes on. So the complexity is there. Today, I'm just going to focus on a few of the kind of gold standards nationally. So the most common metrics when you look at other schools are semester to semester retention. Now you can hear me. Semester to semester retention, first-year graduation rates, our four-year graduation rate, our six-year graduation rate, and then our first destination surveys. So Eric, I'll definitely highlight first destination surveys because there's work to do there. So in looking at our outcomes, I'll also mention maybe 5 actions that it feels like we've taken over the past couple of years to really set ourselves up for what the Chancellor's talking about for the future. So first I'll mention our fall to spring retention rates this semester are a record for the past 10 years. They're at 94.2% in terms of our freshman retention rate. Over the past 10 years, our first year retention rate has improved from 82% to 86%, with the most significant piece happening within the last 2 years. Our four-year graduation rate is a record high of 56%. It's improved over 17 points over the past 10 years. There's room to improve there. In the last year, our six-year graduation rate reached a record high of 70%. So some excellent strides in terms of our rates. Nationally, when you ask schools that are closing their gaps in their predicted and their actual retention and graduation rates, they'll typically have a list of programs or actions that they've taken that have helped them close those gaps. And we would be no different than that. So 5 actions that we can continue to build off of on campus. I would say the first is just using data analytics to enhance our programs and our practices and our policies. Great things happen when you disaggregate the data and you take action and focus your efforts around that data. An example would be the ASAP Summer Bridge program. So we recently we analyzed past student outcomes, and we worked with the Chancellor to modify the program based on that analysis, enhance the scholarship piece of that program, and then students in the last cohort out-predicted their freshman retention rate by 17 percentage points. So taking a very strategic look there. This happened all across campus. Elizabeth McKinley, Assistant Dean in the College of Education and Health Professions, was talking with her yesterday, and she was talking about wanting to focus on students in the murky middle. If you don't know what the murky middle is, talk to Elizabeth after the town hall. Brian Hill, Associate Dean in the College of Engineering, every time you talk with Brian about student success in engineering, they're thinking about their data analytics and to focus their attention. Karen Boston, Senior Assistant Dean in the Walton College, same types of conversations. So I look in student success for us to build on analytics in some great ways. We have the Office of Strategic Analytics and Insights on campus with Brandon Bales leading that team. So looking forward to partnering with him as we move forward. The second thing, and this is language provided by EAB, it's coordinating cross-campus initiatives. And I think the pandemic helped us expedite our coordination over the past few years. Our 3 panelists down here, I know they'll be able to expand on this. They're experts in helping us align our efforts. Whether it's been high-impact practices, it's been text message campaigns, the campus has really expedited the work that we do together. The third thing, and this is language from the Association of College and University Educators, ACU, thank you, Dr. Forth, is student success through exceptional teaching. And it is the case, the primary goal of student success is to help create an environment that's conducive to learning. And so when you look at the work that Dr. Zajic is doing, the Teaching and Faculty Support Center, Teaching Innovation and Pedagogical Support, Dr. Korth, and others, it really is a case when you support faculty, you're supporting students. So that would be a third action. The fourth is, as a campus, we've been providing quick responses to emergent indicators. So students with academic and financial and personal challenges, our response time has increased and our amount of outreach to those students has increased. We have an academic outreach team that has emerged in the Student Success Center that's been doing fantastic work. The Freshman Commuter Student Success Team, UA Cares are veterans at this. This is their wheelhouse. And our embedded tutoring program that we started with the Chancellor is a recent example of our quick response. The last thing I'll mention is just the emergence of proactive advising. So we've created proactive advising efforts on campus, identifying the students that would most benefit from support and then building that support into their experience from day one has just really changed the game for us on campus. A 360 program would be an excellent example of the work that we can continue to do in that realm. So just those five quick actions that we believe have had a cumulative effect that have impacted our recent successes with our metrics. So I would say as we plan for the next 150 years of impacting student success, there's no doubt that we will need to continue with a thoughtful understanding of the holistic student support approach. and there's no doubt that supporting the whole student will take the whole campus. So as I hand the conversation off to Dr. McCray, I will mention that as we've looked at the data, and to echo what the Chancellor and the Provost have said, there are significant opportunity gaps that exist, especially when it comes to supporting first-generation students and Pell-eligible students. So as we work to improve our retention and graduation rates, we will need to focus our attention to support those students in order to close our predicted and actual graduation rates. So thank you again. Looking forward to the conversation.
Great, thank you, Trevor. I just want to, for our audience, tell you, I mean, wow, what you just said, in light of what the Chancellor and the Provost said, 116 different factors to kind of think about what does student success means. In part, it makes me feel old because when you mention teaching, that's where my mind went as somebody who's been doing this for a while. And I think it's a great conversation that you've brought forward today about what is the complexity, what's the murky middle, we'll find out, and texting. We're talking about texting our students and, you know, all of those things that maybe aren't top of mind. That's a big part of today's town hall, is helping people see the complexity. And I know that you have a lot of complexity on the front end of this, which is admissions. So we're really looking forward to your comments, and bring us up to speed, Suzanne.
Thank you, Margaret. And Trevor, thank you for that impressive overview of the work that's being done. We look across this room and we see our partners. We all work locally in our offices, in our units, in our departments, in our colleges. But we need to partner globally to really address some of the issues, some of the real opportunities that we have to increase student success. Today, I'm going to mention 3 areas that we work on in enrollment services. But again, we partner with many of you to make these things happen. I'm going to talk about, just very briefly, how we admit students, how we fund those students, and how we help launch students to postgraduate success. I think most of you know how we admit students has radically changed. It's a very exciting place to be in enrollment services because we're facing challenges that we have never faced before, but we are also facing opportunities that we have never had before. When I tell you that we're up 7% in applications this year, that does not tell you the story. We're up 30% over last year. We're up 60% over 2019. That is rocking our world, right?
Yeah, I want to stop and clap for a second. I mean, in the sense that, wow, what, like, yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Well, it's a great team, and we have a lot of the team here from enrollment services, from recruitment to scholarships, financial aid, student success, the registrar's office. We have a terrific team, but what this 60% increase means for us is a huge opportunity. We now get to increase the average GPA. 10 years ago, our average incoming freshman GPA was a 3.6. Last year, it was a 3.77. Next year, in the fall, not next year, in the fall, right? It's going to go over 3.8. And what does that mean? Well, that changes the classroom. That changes the level of student engagement. Now, what does it mean to have all those extra applications? It means a lot. In Arkansas, what that means is that we will have more students from Arkansas in the freshman class. As of yesterday, we were up 222 applications for housing from Arkansans. Woohoo, that's exciting. That's the land-grant mission that we love. Now, we're up a lot. I was at a meeting with faculty, and Tim Kroll asked me, is there any freshman class in your mind that is too big? I tried not to take that personally. And I told him yes. And we've worked with the strategic enrollment committee. We've worked with the chancellor and his committees to come to a number that's a right fit for the University of Arkansas. And so we're looking to bring in a class this year, 200 students smaller, right? And how do you do that when you have all these additional applications? And what does that mean for the university? It means some really cool things. I think the Department of Biology came up at the last town hall. We are deliberately trying to reduce the number of students coming to the university majoring in biology, psychology, nursing, architecture, and exercise science. These are oversubscribed majors. And when you have an oversubscribed major, the experience of the individual student may not be at the highest level. But we have undersubscribed majors too, and we have a real opportunity to bring more students in those fields. We are also bringing in students from out of state who we push higher and higher GPAs. So we know they're going to come and succeed, and less of our funding has to go to help them. And as we are upping the ratcheting it up for out-of-state students, we're granting broader access for in-state students. We now get into every high school in this state because test optional. Before, valedictorians in the state could not come to the University of Arkansas. That does not fit with the land-grant mission. And it's super exciting that while we're doing this, we're also increasing retention and graduation. We're also increasing selectivity. So that's going to go up as well. So there are just many wins in this increase in applications and what we can do to address the campus and how we can improve the classroom and student success. Now, one of the other things, funding, and we've talked about that a little bit already. We know that we have students on this campus who are underfunded. But let me tell you what we do. We award about $100 million a year in financial aid. That includes $20 million to Pell Grant students. We have increased for students whose families earn less than $26,000 a year, not a living wage. We've increased scholarships to those students by $3 million. We're focusing our attention on Arkansas. Last year, 87% of all of our scholarship dollars went to Arkansans. This year, it's going to be close to 90%. We are making a concerted effort to focus those funds on keeping high-achieving students in the state, keeping students who want access to the flagship, giving them access, but also being mindful of need. So now when we review scholarships, need is top of mind. And we want to make a change. And fortunately, some good things are happening in the state. The lottery is looking to make some changes to include need. So that first year, which we know is so tough for students, if that passes, then Pell Grant students will get $5,000 instead of $1,000 in the first year. That's a game changer. Yeah? Let's say woohoo. And then the federal funding for Pell is also changing. And in 2024, when those changes are implemented, we expect 18% nationally increase in those students who receive Pell. We also expect the amount to go up. That's another great support for our students. Right now, there's a tuition gap for Pell Grant students on our campus of about $1,400. We hope the state and the federal government will help us address that gap. But if they can't, we're going to work hard to find ways to address the gap. Because we know when you close the financial gap, you close the retention gap. When you have students with similar GPAs and the main characteristic that is separating them from graduating is need, then we as an institution have an ethical responsibility to address that need. And we feel that keenly in enrollment services, and we know you feel it keenly in student success and across the campus, and we are working to address that. The other thing that I'll just mention briefly is how we launch students to postgraduate success. And there are a lot of cool things going on the campus right now. The Career Development Center, revamping things, and we're really excited about those changes. The Honors College has the Futures Hub. Engineering just implemented their one-stop shop, and I could name every college and say what cool things they are doing. Probably the most essential thing, however, happens with faculty doing research, and this ties us back to that research mission. We know that students who complete research, undergraduate research, have higher graduation rates. They graduate on time, and they graduate. And they graduate, we know that research also launches them into grad school, med school, law school, nationally competitive award. And nationally competitive awards is something dear to my heart. That's in enrollment services too. So we think of that student Matt Hargis will tell you we have students who come from the 5th grade to colleges across the campus who are coming to transfer from colleges across the campus. But we want to be able to say to every single student who comes here, when we tell them this is a great place to be, you can come here and graduate. We want to make sure that in 4 or 5 years for architecture, in those 4 or 5 short years, when they get out of here, they're going to say, I made the right decision. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for bringing us that information and that energy. If you're out there wondering kind of, well, how much do we care? I think you just heard how much we care. Not just can we get the student here, but can we make them successful? Can we launch lives? And that's really important. That's what student success is about, and it's a shared endeavor. And so now I'd like to move to this side of the panel. Some questions for you beyond the foundation, some ideas to get us started before we get into more questions and answers. I'd like to start with you, Deb. How can faculty support student success? It's a lot that a faculty member has to manage today. What are your thoughts on where student success is in those responsibilities?
Thank you. Well, you know, student success is very important to faculty. I mean, think about the last couple of years. We taught remotely in a heartbeat. We taught with masks on and behind plexiglass, and then without masks on. And we did this because we cared about the success of our students. And we did all of this while, you know, remaining hip. HIP stands for High Impact Practices. All 11 of them are on our campus. These are 11 high impact practices that are shown by research to increase student success. I would name all 11 of them, but I will just name my favorites so that those of you who haven't read this research yet get kind of a flavor of what I'm talking about. Service learning, writing intensive classes, undergraduate research, which Suzanne just mentioned, collaborative learning, e-portfolios, first-year seminars, and the capstone class. It's just a few of them. If you are interested in learning about the rest of them, check out the American Association of College and Universities website. Look up 11 HIPs, and you'll find them all. So, another thing that we, you know, when we're talking about the HIPs, on our campus, we started these conversations around 2018, and in 2019, we brought in wellness. Well, now on the national level, they're talking about wellness as well when they're talking about the high impact practices. So it's kind of nice to be ahead of the game. And when we're talking about what faculty are doing on our campus now, I do want to give a shout out to 2 new programs that we've been experimenting with in Fulbright College. One is the Instructor Coach Program. This was an idea that came from much higher than us, from these nice people over here, where they hired faculty members who had 75% of their teaching load, their load was teaching, and 25% of their load was coaching and working with the Fulbright Student Success team. So they, you know, had to come meet with us and talk about supporting students, and they each had a caseload of students. And they learned how, you know, to do some of the coaching things that we do with students. So they helped that group of students. But at the same time, they were learning the things, the tools that we use in student success all the time, like UA Success, and how to raise flags and set up appointments, and to use these tools that we have for students in their classes as well, and learn how to send a student to U of A Cares, and understand what those different resources and things are on the campus. So most of these people were brand new faculty members from 10 different departments, around 15 per semester. So, you know, hi to you guys if you're listening out there. Then Trevor mentioned the AQ microcredential. That is a very powerful program. And there are other institutions that are adopting this credentialing program. We have 5 faculty on our campus right now who are fully credentialed in effective college teaching. We have, at the end of this semester, we'll have 100, since we started this program, who will have one of the micro-credentials. And so the 4 micro-credentials are promoting active learning, that's HIT, by the way, creating an inclusive and supportive learning environment, inspiring inquiry and preparing lifelong learners. And then the 4th one, which we're going to launch this summer, is designing learner-centered courses. So at the end of the summer, we should have 20 to 30 faculty members who will be fully credentialed in effective college teaching. So this program is endorsed by the American Council of Education. It's evidence-based, it's statistically proven to increase retention and achievement gaps for our students. So, you know, if you are a faculty member out there and you're interested in being in one of the cohorts, send me an email. We probably can make some arrangements, but, and you know, we should thank the faculty for all of the you know, the tireless work, and sometimes thankless, because you know, the students don't always thank you because they don't know how great this experience is at the time until much later. So thank you to the faculty, and thank you for the question.
Oh my gosh, thank you for the answer. I've just learned a lot in the last 5 minutes about the rigor and structure we bring to supporting faculty, and I just want to reiterate what Deb just said. Thank you, faculty. Thank you. Because it's your engagement with things like HIPS that allow us to propel student success, and it also reminds us that teaching changes, or students change, and that part of student success is keeping up with that so we're as effective as possible. Another important question is for our students, how do we help them feel comfortable on campus? So Leslie, can you talk a little bit about how belonging and mattering relates to student success?
Yes, thank you. With belonging, not to oversimplify too much, but with belonging being about a sense of connection, or even for new students, a potential sense of connection with people, with ideas, with activities on campus, and mattering being the extent to which that feels like it's important and valued by the other people in a given community. If we can agree on those basic ideas. I think what we also can agree on is that we all need to have those feelings. We all need to experience that. And if we don't experience it where we are, then we tend to not want to stay there. And that's, I think, a matter of instinct and common sense, but it also is borne out in literature. The lexicon of that scholarship in higher ed has evolved over time so that we more all the time illuminate the importance of the experience of belonging and mattering, and speak about it more specifically. But the truth is that decades of academic work in that field on engagement, on persistence, and retention have always, I think, revealed a profound connection between belonging and mattering and student success. I appreciate the onus that puts on the institution. Echo what Suzanne said earlier, really an ethical obligation we have to be attentive to belonging, to create space for it, to be affirming, and to message and communicate about the mattering, which is part of our responsibility, and to think of ourselves as needing to be more student ready, and not only for us to think of incoming students as being ready for us, as being college ready, to loosely quote Tia Brown McNair, who's been an educator on our campus and involved with Deb's HIPS before. I'm excited always to hear about from our leadership the priority of increasing financial support for students who really need it. Financial obstacles alone are their own interruption of belonging for students on our campus, and always doing our best to increase those resources and to award them intentionally. I'll always be excited about. Of course, we do a lot of cohort-based support that engages both belonging and mattering, with student success. And that happens all over campus in the colleges, as we've heard a little bit about already. In my area, the Multicultural Center really is directed by Adrian Smith, who I think isn't in the room, but I'll give him a shout out too, through a director in our team of the College Access Initiative who is in the room. That's a team that starts working with students to see that if they want to, they can belong in college from a much earlier age than when they arrive on our campus, and that they can belong here if they make the University of Arkansas their college of choice. Our freshman commuter student success program is relatively new as an intervention, very carefully structured, and so far really successful. We're really excited about those things and about our collaborations with so many student success initiatives under Trevor's leadership. Dawn Nix is in the room, who's directed our ASAP program, a bridge program that keeps evolving and we're starting a new pilot for that this year that we're excited about. And I'm also really excited about what I think is another high impact practice, which is shared intellectual experiences or common intellectual experiences. Jen Edwards is the new director of UNIB courses, which include University Perspectives, and represents a huge opportunity to create a very common, very important initial learning experience for our students that I know I have great confidence in her vision for that and the way that that intersects with belonging as well.
Amazing. Thank you. Really, really good to hear how important inclusion mattering is to everything that Deb just said, right? If we don't have that raw material coming in, feeling good about being there and being supported, it's just not going to work. So, final question for you, Adrian. We're a decentralized campus where the college is critical to success. And so how can each academic college, with its own unique advising process, actually work together, though, to support overall student success?
Thank you for the question. I will say that some know about the Academic Advising Council that we've had for years on campus, where the advising directors and registrar's office and different ones come together, and we talked about things that impacted all of us and what to do. Prior to the pandemic, I met with, at the time, was Provost Robinson and Terry Martin about how do advisors, academic advising directors, get to have more involvement with faculty committees on campus, with faculty senate, because we were enforcing policies that we didn't have any say-so in. And the support started then, that what you hear now didn't just start now, but they said, what do you want to be a part of? And so we came together as a council and said, where do we think that we can have the most impact and where a voice needs to be heard? And they did the legwork to help us to get included in those committees, and we continue to do that. The pandemic, while difficult, was also probably one of the biggest blessings for the Advising Council. We had 52 days to partner with New Student Orientation to take campus orientation to online, and where we all did our own things, we had to come together and have a shell that was one message to all the students, but yet we could have our own flavors. So the work that we did with Amber Roth and her team and all the directors, we bonded during the sunlight and during the nighttime in terms of making that happen for the students. But it didn't stop there, so we continued those efforts now. We continue to meet together, and we respect what each other does, but we also learn from each other and try to figure out, how do we take what you're doing and how does it apply to our campus? Brandy Flack is no longer with us, but she spearheaded the efforts for a campus retention meeting that has exploded, and it's not led by the academic advisors, but it's led by campus partners that know we need to know what you're doing in the colleges for advising, but advising is so much more than just a student coming and asking for classes. And so we're hearing about financial needs, we're hearing about belonging, and so we come together and we get to have a broader conversation. The members of that group, the treasurer's office, financial aid, scholarship, freshman commuter success, honors college, athletics, student success. So that team is really broad. Elizabeth McKinley just went to the NACADA Academic Advising Institute, and she came back and she said, campus impacts retention, but advisors get to impact persistence with students through those one-on-one conversations. And it's not just advisors, but it helps us to have conversations with campus partners so that we can have that impact. And so while we're different, we partner together really well, and it's really an exciting time for our campus.
Wow, fabulous. That sounds like such an important initiative to provide that foundation, regardless of whether you're going to be more specialized or unique in your college, to have that foundation and that recognition of all the factors. High five. Yeah. That's great. All right. I'm really inspired. I hope you are. What I heard from our opening panel is that we have an ethical obligation to ask what is possible for our students and then support them in achieving that. And there's no greater work than that, right? As we often tell our students, they are the next generation. Some of them will be on this panel in 15 years. And so what we do matters. We have a lot. I'm going to shift now to our questions that have been submitted before. And I want to pick up on that last theme about kind of advising. We've had a lot of questions about how do we, and I'll give you kind of the big question, and then we'll unpack it piece by piece. And this is for the whole panel. How do we connect students with all these great services? They may be on social media. They may be feeling stigma. They don't want to come forward. They may not even know that they are needing support because maybe nobody's ever supported them before. How do we as a campus involve students in student success is the theme of the question. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. It may even begin with advising or admissions and kind of what's the readiness for a student to come in saying it's okay to ask for help. Or if I have a financial struggle or a struggle with food security, that this is a campus that will support me. So who wants to take that first? How do we connect students to student success?
You want me to start at that
Go for
early
it.
moment?
You
Okay.
start at that early moment, Suzanne.
Okay, sure. We have recruiters that really are well-trained. We do training every year, and they visit with these various offices, including Student Success, and they try to share this information, especially as they can see the student record. When they're recruiting the student or working one-on-one with a student, to make sure that they know what resources are available or what the most likely that the student will connect with resources. And then orientation, which has already been mentioned, we embed all of that there. And there is a website where they can go back and double check that availability. So we try to get them that information every step of the way. The registrar's office touches students throughout their career here, as does financial aid. And they have people who work with the students one-on-one a lot, especially in financial aid where we have counselors who really walk them through. And we are now hiring a person with the treasurer's office. We're hiring a person in financial literacy so that we can also help them make good decisions. If you have a Pell Grant, maybe Adobe's not the residence hall you want to live in. And so we're trying to help with that, address those issues.
That's great. Again, I'm struck by how broad the range of issues is and the number of services. Anyone else? Charles?
We have a big campus.
Yes.
We know it. But we have lots of small communities. And I think there's power in the small communities, and we need to encourage people to actively get engaged in those small communities. I love what Student Affairs does with encouraging new students to pick an RSO. I just think that's really creative, and they don't have to, but we should certainly make them feel guilty if they don't. I mean, that is something that we should come to build as a culture, that isolation is never good. Every faculty member has an opportunity here as a faculty member to, as you engage your students, to be sensitive, develop a sensitivity to students who don't seem to want to engage. I like to encourage students to come visit me. And sometimes you as a faculty member, if you send a message saying, come see me, that's a different message than you're invited to come anytime you'd like. And so I think we have to be active and aggressive in our efforts to connect students with something or somebody. Because, that belonging and mattering, we can't know if that's happening unless we have some sense that they're connecting. And then when we determine what their challenge is, usually we have the ability to address it effectively. But we got to determine it early, and we have to address it early so that we can have the greatest likelihood of retaining that student and helping them to be successful. So,
That's great. Anyone else want to weigh in? Trevor?
Sure. I'll add, we also build it into their experience. So every student on campus takes freshman business connections or freshman engineering program, and then Dr. Edwards with university perspective. So we're trying to be intentional about building that into their experience that first year. And I also mentioned, you asked about how are students helping students, and Ann Raines can attest to this. We're big on the students helping students model on campus. I think the Student Success Center employs close to 300 students. University Recreation, probably close to 500 now. So students want to help each other, and we harness that energy and let them support each other.
Great. Leslie?
Yeah,
and then
if I
Adrian.
can add a kind of cool piece to this that many student affairs professionals shared with each other about the last year was what seemed like an increasing willingness among our students, undergraduate students and graduate students alike, to ask more questions, that we were seeing an uptick in their comfort and confidence coming to folks with questions. Dr. Robinson commissioned, more or less, a committee, a project on belonging that two of my colleagues, Lori Lander in Student Affairs in the Dean's Office with me, and Anthony DiNicola in the Multicultural Center, that they led. And one of the really big takeaways from the focus groups that they did with students was the need for students to encounter help wherever they go to ask for it. And that's an important challenge that we have on an institution, on a campus this large, with so many different specialties and different jobs. The importance of validating, of doing what we can to contribute both to belonging and mattering wherever they are, even if you're not the subject matter expert. Anticipating as best we can and receiving questions with care, even if we're going to have to walk them somewhere else to get the answer. That's an important part of our challenge, and I know our goals and lots of activity in trying to connect students.
Excellent. Adrian?
So there are a few different ways that it happens. When I think about faculty being able to raise flags for students in UA Success and UA Connect, and it gives us an alertness of what's happening in those classes, and so you know how to outreach. Deb started a project with Pearson, who leads our the company that we get do the math homework through. That's the simplest ways to say it. And they build reports for us to understand trends for students. In Calculus 1, Calculus 2, we've expanded it to chemistry. And so we have a way to outreach to students before asking for help. So there's a lens that we didn't see before. Talking with the registrar's office through Academic Advising Council, getting emails that the scholarships office, registrar's office, different ones send, and their willingness to let us have impact of how do you make that more student-friendly in terms of being able to understand it. Because if we can't understand it, how is a student supposed to understand it? Trying to find more ways. The campus retention group is also important because we didn't know the resources that were on campus. You can't give something to a student that you don't know. And so that's been really intentional for us to try to learn what everyone else does. I think it was 2 weeks ago, the Chancellor and I were sitting on a panel for one of the fraternities, and it was talking about community. And he said the importance of coming to our offices. And I told him, I said, you've missed out on meals that are outside of the food court or outside of the dining halls because you don't do that. And I had a student come in and talk to him the other day, and he said, you know, if I go to a large event, I'm still too nervous to talk to somebody. And so I thought, we thought belonging happened, or not me, thought belonging happened by getting you to the event. But he said, I still don't know how to talk at that place. So you've taken me to another large group, but I'm still too shy as a freshman. And I said, well, what do you need? If you can do small icebreakers or other things like that, that gives me intentionality to engage with other people, then I'll do it. And so when we prepped for the panel, I shared that experience. It had nothing to do with what we were talking about, but I said, I told RJ, I said, I'm gonna need your voice. I'm gonna need your voice of other students and get it. And everywhere I can, I'll share that.
Yeah.
And so that we can think more outside of just advising, but in every capacity, we think because we've brought something together that the students engage. And that doesn't mean that they engage, they've just attended. And so
Wow.
that has a big impact.
Oh, yeah, I mean, such interesting context here from Trevor talking about data and you pointing out different data that we can use to understand the student, to what you said, Chancellor, about it's also, and you, the simple things. That student who looks lost in the union, that student who hasn't asked a question all semester and averts their eyes during a classroom conversation. How are you?
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
We were hiring for our advisors in One Stop, and one of them has Hispanic background, and she said in her culture, they didn't talk to elders. And so she didn't go to her professors. We tend to group students into one packet, and we've never seen the individual students or the backgrounds, and so sometimes we don't know why people don't ask for questions, and we assume variety of reasons, but we don't know cultural background, we don't know family background, and so as we look at numbers, as Trevor said earlier, as you disaggregate the numbers, you have to dig deeper than this freshman class or this group, but when you start pulling it apart, you can see different trends and different things, and that, I think, helps us to outreach to students better.
Yeah, so in addition to how are you, who are you? That's great. We've had a number of questions, shifting gears a little bit. I'm going to come back to you, Provost Martin, and to you, Trevor. We've had a number of questions about, what about graduate students? What are we doing for graduate student success? And also, are we open to international students being part of our campus community, both at the undergraduate and graduate level? So let's talk a little bit about graduate education and how student success relates to that.
I can say that this is an area we have to improve. We've not looked at it in depth like we have the undergraduates. We haven't done the analytics and looked at our graduation rates, our time to once they start their master's or PhD. Sometimes it's way too long, and this is an area I think that we, over the next few years, are going to start looking at closer. I know we will be looking at it closer. But that's an area we haven't invested and spent a lot of time looking at. We've done some things, but it's not been the focus of the campus. It's not been as much of a focus nationally like the undergraduate. So we will be looking at the undergraduates. We also, we do a lot with the international students in making sure we have a lot of people that keep in touch with the international students. There's a lot, as I said, these are areas. When we first started, we realized we have to get out and look at different groups, the first gen, the international students. They have different needs, just as she shared, talking to the elders, that it was not a common thing. So we have to meet them where their needs are and understand what they're doing. And I think part of our, and I know it's mostly undergraduate, but the 360 advising, to where they look at the student, at everything, what is needed, not just academics. It's their needs, the mental health, whatever needs they have. And if I can, you can just imagine an international student coming here to live just like many of our, I'll just have to say, many of our experiences as first gen. I came to the University of Arkansas by myself. My parents didn't come for several years to even see where I was living. And so I can imagine what an international student, the things that they are faced with. And we will be looking at, we do a lot with that, but there's a lot of areas we haven't done as well as we could have.
Right, and that's exactly why we're doing strategic planning, though,
Yes.
right? To pull forward these issues. Trevor?
I agree with the provost, and we've made some small changes this year and had some wins. I know Dana Blair, who coordinates the writing studio, and Ann Raines, who is in charge of academic support, sent a message yesterday about a breakdown of the students who have come to the writing studio over the past year. And so we got to see very clearly the increase in graduate students, the number of law students who have come. So I think the writing studio is an area that we've tried to focus on as we've opened the new building. We had a request to increase support for students who are taking quantitative analysis classes, so we have tried to be intentional in that area. So academic support, but we definitely have room to improve in terms of the holistic support.
Terrific. That's great. So I want to, again, shift some gears going on to kind of the what's beyond undergraduate education, we've had a number of questions about where does distance learning fit? Is it going to be part of the undergrad's residential experience going forward? Do we have thoughts about that? I'll leave that to you. Do we have thoughts about distance education playing a role, not just for online students, but for residential students? I think that question probably comes from the pandemic.
Cheryl Murphy, and
There she is.
the confidence that I have in her leadership, the job that she's done. I mean, I met Cheryl I started working with Cheryl when I was provost, and, you know, like an orientation for online students. That was her idea, I remember, because she brought it to me, and she said, this is what we need to do. That type of leadership, and, you know, it plays out in the rankings that we see for our global campus. And so I am really, really happy that we have a person like Cheryl who is going to be part of helping us shape this effort towards student success. And so I can assure you that Global Campus and attention to global campus improvements will be part of our strategic planning. And I didn't know, Cheryl, if you wanted to make any comments about Global Campus and where we are.
Thank you. I can just give you some basic numbers. You were asking how does that roll into our on-campus students as well. In our last annual report, we had 4,332 100% online students. That's completely at a distance. But we served over 16,407 students, individual students, in online courses. So we are serving the campus as well, greatly. And so we are a mix of both on-campus and complete distance students, and those are two very unique populations, and we're working very hard every day to understand what their specific needs are and how we can meet their needs.
Excellent, thank you so much. And to avoid the phenomenon, too, of sometimes people thinking that we have all the answers, one of the things I know about Cheryl is her curiosity about how this story is written, meaning that the pandemic really did change our relationship with distance learning, but we don't know how that story ends. We're still writing it. And so the curiosity and the leadership, I think, is terrific. Another topic that kind of comes out, I think, of the pandemic, it's always been there, but it's highlighted much more. I have a number of questions about where does mental health fit in with student success? Where does wellness fit in? And I would love to hear perspectives from any of our panelists on those issues. I see you shaking your head, Deb, so I'm going to pitch it to you first. Also because you've talked to us today about faculty being in the classroom, and sometimes they may be the first people who are sensing that something is not going well for a student, or that students need to focus more on wellness.
Well, thank you. But first, I want to give a shout out to Cheryl. Before we started the panel discussion, I was talking to Cheryl. Is my microphone not working?
A little bit closer. There you
Okay.
go. Speak into the mic.
All right. We have our first cohort of online learners working on an AQ micro credential. They're working on a credential on making online classes more active. So exploring and unpacking active learning in the online classroom. I'm learning a lot at the same time as they're learning. And the conversations that they're having with each other have been incredible. They've only started like a couple weeks ago, and they're excited and talking about which micro are we going to do next. So we're excited about that, and all these teachers and how committed they are to being more effective teachers. Now, as far as wellness is concerned, we started talking about wellness because you can't be hip unless you're well. And so in Pat Walker Health Center and the Wellness Center, they talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness. And we talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness in university perspectives. We talk about the 8 dimensions of wellness in Destination Arkansas Blackboard Activities, which is the onboarding class through Blackboard that students go through before they come to campus. It's the thing they do between orientation and A week. So, and we've been talking about this, but, you know, and I think that there's probably a lot more people out there who are more, who know a lot more about this through CAPS, the Counseling and Psychological Services. I know that they have more resources than they used to have. I mean, one of the common problems that we would say as faculty members is that we would send a student over to CAPS and they didn't have somebody to meet with. But now those problems have been going away. There have been more staffing over there and more creative ways to serve students, like the Let's Talk activities. I see some, and I know I'm forgetting some very valuable services, but what's happening is that we are telling them about the problems that our students are having, and there are people from the Wellness Center and us are coming up with different solutions for the students, but we're still working on it.
Anyone else on wellness?
Yeah, I just,
Yeah.
you know, because I worked in student affairs, as you know, I know a lot about the efforts that student affairs has put into better supporting our students under the leadership of Dr. Monica Holland. And I know Melissa and Jeremy have been working on this as well to really expand opportunity, relationships with UAMS. And you know, I wish that one of them would come and talk about this, because I think that they could talk to us more specifically about what's being done right now. So maybe we should pass the mic. Yeah, let's just pass the mic.
Let's
They're
pass the
going to be
mic.
conscripted, so forget the volunteerism here. And I also want to underscore this point that has been made. It really does take a village to do student success right. And that's why you can't find student success in just one area. Every area of the campus has a role to play in enhancing student success for our university. So I'll get out the way. I don't know who's speaking, but
We got
Yeah,
a great
so
crew. Go
For
ahead,
us
Jeremy.
moving forward, it's about building those relationships across campus. Where do we have opportunities? We talk about partnering a lot, but where are we actually truly doing that, and where are we coming together to continue to do that? Not only internally to our campus, but as Chancellor alluded to, UAMS. We know there's vital services that our students need that we're going to have a hard time providing, so where are those partnerships so we can help meet students where they are? And so we're just excited to really sit back and look back and see where are these opportunities, where can we engage, and where can we start having conversations. So take this as my invitation to come see us and figure out where we can work together to help provide for students.
Great, thank you. What I'd like to do now is just transition to Mike's being in the room. We have about 25 minutes left, and we invite your questions here in the room, or if you're listening online, please feel free to use the email and submit them, and we'll get them up on Teams, and I'll try to ask them. So, questions out there? Thoughts in terms of student success for our panelists? Just a minute, we'll get you the mic.
I read a report that says most students who enter college think they're going to get a degree in 4 years. It happens that only about 45% of them get a degree in 4 years. So the question is, at what point did we decide to use 6 and 8 years as a mark of success, other than just to improve the appearance of the statistics?
Great question. So some of us thought it was a 4-year degree. Trevor, you mentioned earlier that 6 years is a measure, and sometimes 8-year graduation rates. So can you explain that a little bit?
I mean, I think for us, the 4-year mark is, we have been focused on increasing the rates. So to be at 56% over the past 10 years, an increase by 17 points is pretty significant. So if you talk to academic advisors, that's their focus. There are some programs, architecture, that are 5-year programs, but 4 years is certainly a goal. 6 years is based on national trends and sort of national, maybe the national clearinghouse.
I
Sure,
think that,
from their side. For us, we still, I mean, students that have marked they want to be degree seeking, that's their goal, is to get a degree.
So I
And
think,
yeah, sure.
Yeah, to jump in, I would just say that I think the question is, is 6 years done just for the window dressing of a school is successful? I think what I'm hearing from this panel, though, is that we often also have individuals on campus. That 4 years may be a goal, but it may not be for everybody, and the differences may be dependent on individuals, too. Adrian?
I think one of the challenges that we also have is it depends on the degree and the academic preparation of the student. And so I went to a class a few years ago, and we would say in engineering, if you didn't start in Cal 1, you were behind. And he said, are they behind, or are they starting where they're prepared to start? And so there's 4-year graduation definitely is important, but for some students, when we talked about the differences, they have to work because school isn't affordable to them in their current family state. And you'll have some students that feel so much pressure to graduate in 4 years and to work 20, 30 hours a week, and they can't pass the classes. So they also keep paying for classes that they ultimately drop to have this look of trying to get through it, but then they learn, if I take 12 hours, I'm really successful. And so I think one of the things about student success is, do we define it? Or does the student get to define what's successful for them? And so when we start putting those, you have to graduate in 4 years, they don't make it, then they feel like they've not been successful. But what if they're the first in their family and they graduate in 4.5 or 5 years and they thrive? You've done it. You've done the thing that you've come to do. And we're limited actually as advisors. One of the things that is a challenge is the Academic Challenge Scholarship says 15 hours every semester. Well, you have students who come in who are over-prepared. And now they're paying for classes that they don't need to try to meet hours to pay for a scholarship. And so all of it comes into play of what are the opportunities that we have that aren't just about the 4-year, but it's really what is successful for them in building those opportunities. So we have it as our guide, but how do you not also let it constrain you at the same time?
Great. Thank you, Adrian. Great answer. Great. We want to make sure that we have time for everybody to ask questions.
That's not what I asked. The answers were not what I asked. It's why do we let them believe up front that they can get in and they can do it?
Sir, I'm going to ask you to cede the floor to others who have questions. I thought I saw one over in this direction. Question? No? Thought I saw one over here. Okay. Does anybody want to follow up on this point, this discussion about 6 years?
I will say, though, when you ask the question about what do we believe, we actually have those honest conversations with the students starting at orientation and through advising every semester of what does that look like. The guide is also the 8-semester degree plan. So we have those for all the degrees, and we have to have those really tough conversations with students of what does your path look like and what are the adjustments that you can make. And so actually it's even harder. I would say Elizabeth talking with nursing is how do you have a crucial conversation with a student when they come to orientation and we don't have, as you said, they're overly, I forget the word, that we have overly something students, oversubscribed majors. But that's tough because they've come here with it, and so how do you have that conversation where we still want you to reach your goal? And so we have to navigate those in a variety of different ways, always with the student's success at the top and making sure that they make the most informed decision that helps them to be successful.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I can say too that one of the things I'm most proud about on our team and among many other colleagues that I work with on campus is the agility with which we meet students where they are. Only yesterday I got to celebrate with a student who began with us as a member of a scholarship cohort and stopped out because I think he became fundamentally unsure of what he was doing. He's been working full-time on our campus in financial aid for a while and is back in school going at a pace that works for him in a field that he's deeply passionate about. He intends to go to graduate school to achieve a doctoral degree, and again, just yesterday I got to celebrate some of that with him. So I think it's an example of how we can combine, again, belonging and mattering with a one-on-one student approach and help them achieve goals that work for them based on their own experience.
Thank you. Thank you. Was there a question? Go ahead.
Good morning, actually. Question. So how does the panel see other individuals, specifically staff who are not in student affairs or in other areas, to help support and engage students that don't actively see students on a day-to-day basis, but may have some indirect, communication or engagement in some ways?
Thank you for that question. Beyond student affairs, go ahead, Suzanne.
A lot of people in this room and across the campus hire work-study students. And I think work-study student, if you have work-study student workers, I would say that's a great opportunity to meet regularly with the student, to do check-in with the student. You're getting a great deal financially. You pay 1/4 of the student's salary. And I think maybe even setting some learning outcomes for those students would be a great way for people who hire work-study students but don't have other contact with students to have a real impact on student success.
Great, excellent. Other thoughts on that? Chancellor?
I was going to say, I think the chancellor answered this when he was talking about how do we make a large campus feel small. And it's going to take all of us to create those mentoring relationships.
That's right. And the quality of our buildings, like the settings in the room, having basic equipment that works, the technology, Steve, that works. Even if you never see the student, but the student, when they plug in, it works. The grounds being cared for gives people a sense that this is a nice place, and this is a place that, matters, and so they matter because they're a part of it. I don't know that there's anything that we do that doesn't have some, maybe indirect impact on the student and the student's sense of who he or she is and where they are and how important it is. And that's why I see this, and I said it about research as an ecosystem where we've got to work together. Brandy and alumni, you do things that are directly affecting students, but sometimes it's just the outreach to get the people involved who will then connect with the students. So it's everybody has to work and be a part of this effort, because if any part of it is not working, then we're losing out on opportunities. That was 116 things you mentioned, Trevor, to have a positive impact on students and their outcomes.
Great, thank you. Provost.
I'll give you an example. This morning, I got a call at 4 o'clock. Power was out on campus.
And then you called me.
Yes, I called him. I woke
And you
him up.
called Ann.
I woke in. If I'm going to get woke up, others are going to wake up too. But Scott Turley's team, they were out at 4 o'clock this morning trying to get the power back. They switched the power to the alternative source. They were there so we would have power. The IT team, they were looking to make sure that everything was going to come back up when it did, because we wanted to have our classes ready to go this morning when we had started at 7:30. So those are things that everybody has an impact, and we need to, I think, thank people.
Oh, man, I talked to Chartwells this morning. They're like, yeah, we got here early, about 4, to make sure that everybody had what they needed so that we could feed everybody. It really is that type of story.
Chartwells, when I pulled in the parking lot about 5 o'clock, Chartwells, he pulled up
He
right
wants a
beside-
raise, that's all he.
I'm going to go home early this evening.
Yeah, employer of choice is the next one.
Yes, but Chartwells, you're right. He said, I've been to every one of our refrigerators, and we're all okay. So those are the things that other people, these are things that we're doing, though, for the students, and to make sure their experience is good while we're here.
Yeah. Adrian.
I think on a different twist that we probably have an opportunity to expose students to careers that they wouldn't have thought of. And that's by meeting people as mentors. I think about like the PATH program will reach out, or different ones will ask faculty and staff to be mentors. And so sometimes how do we get people into those offices where a student could go meet with Dr. Williams or meet with somebody else that they normally wouldn't, but it's a chance of belonging to be able to engage with someone else on campus. And so I think that there are opportunities that we have to find ways that what everybody does to contribute, but how do we let the students know how to connect with them? Informally and formally, of adding other people to different committees or mentorship programs that gives opportunities for students to see. I didn't know. I was an athlete in college. I just knew my coaches and I knew my instructors. And when I came here and worked in orientation and I learned about Multicultural Center, I went back and I'm like, did my college have that? Like, I didn't know because I didn't engage with them. And so sometimes we miss students having careers because they're never exposed to the other offices. And so there's an opportunity to give them that.
That's great. So what I just heard is it's the in-person. You know, you have that work-study student and you take an interest in them. We're also all models and mentors for our students. And third, that there's the behind-the-scenes support that happens every day in invisible ways that can give us a sense of pride and connection to students, which is great. I have another question, but is there a question in the room? Anyone else? This is a challenging question. I'm a C student. Am I successful? I heard the yes from the room and the shaking of the heads. Let's unpack that a little bit, because it's a question I think that maybe some students would ask themselves. What do you think?
Well, I think, well, C means you're still here, so fundamentally, that is success. But I think really it's based on the conditions around that C student. As Adrian mentioned, if you're working, 40 hours a week and you have C's, that's working hard. I mean, that's really achieving at a very, very high level. If you have lots of time and you have C's because you just decided that Dixon Street is your favorite street and you want to experience it every day, I don't know that we would define that as success, because there's probably a lot more that you could do to maximize outcomes for yourself. So I really do think that that's, to answer that question, it would depend on the circumstances around that individual.
Sure. Thank you.
I
Trevor.
would give a plug for the Student Success Center. We help a lot of students move from C's to B's and A's. So come get some academic coaching.
Other thoughts on C's?
I mean, I would say yes right away. At least I would imagine first the possibility that that student is successful, and challenge all of us to inquire as to what norms we're operating under that lead us down the road of assuming that a C is not good, that another grade is good. I know we've all been socialized in a world where we hear kind of celebrated all the time the great achievements of many important leaders in our nation who are C students at Ivy League schools and state schools and others. And that's the kind of conversation that I know some of us try to have with students who are struggling too. To Dr. Robinson's point, if you're trying as hard as you can and you're earning a C in a really difficult class, it's very different than not trying at all. And it also makes for a very different conversation with student success professionals. Who knows?
Great. Suzanne.
I was chatting with a math faculty member from Pulaski Tech, and we were talking about C's and how to address them. And as she said, C's means degrees. But she was coming at it from that math perspective. We think of C as average. We have average students who come through here and graduate.
Yeah, sure. This is a related question. It's another one that is a bit of it depends, perhaps. Is the goal of college education a job? I think a parent may have asked that question.
I think I mentioned this in my
Yeah,
opening
you did.
remarks. And so many times that is the goal, is the job at the end. There's others that are going to graduate school. We prepare students for graduate school as well in our curriculum. But many of them, it is the job. Sometimes it's not. Many of our students are not going to either graduate school or they're not going into the marketplace. So it depends upon, as you said, I'm going to give the law your answer, as you mentioned last time. It depends.
Yeah.
So it, for that student, but we do have an obligation for students that want to have a job. We want to do better than we've been doing in our job placement and getting them access to that. One of the things I think is very important for all students is that internship, is that experience along the way that will help those students make a difference in being able to go into the workplace. That's, I think, is an important piece for many students as far as that, whether they're an A student or a C student. That will make a difference in a lot of cases.
So maybe maybe the goal is helping students find what they think their life path is going to be, whether that's graduate education or maybe a different job or even major than they thought when they arrived. Trevor, you
I
look
was
like you
just
want
going
to
to
weigh
say,
in.
maybe we can hear from Erica Estes in Student Affairs. And while she's grabbing the mic, Dr. Edwards has got us reading a book called The Excellent Mind. And it's academic skills and skills for the workforce. There's sometimes a false dichotomy. We're teaching students how to maximize learning so they get to that place on Bloom's taxonomy where they're creating. And so we release them into culture to create at their highest possible levels.
I love that. Comment.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think it's not just a job or a graduate program, it's meaning making. So understanding the engagement, whatever that engagement is, in classes, out of classes, in the community, understanding how that relates to their own lifetime goals. And remembering that students are going to be doing this over and over again throughout their entire lives. So the internships are an excellent way to prototype what that might look like and to expand their network. But it's also that reflective understanding of how does this relate back to who I am as a person, what my successes are, or what my strengths are, and how can I give more to the world.
Excellent, thank you. I think, Adrian, you wanted to weigh in.
I think if you think about first generation and Pell eligible students, it's the draw to get you to college. The job is what I came for, and it's how I change my family. And I have no idea that I'm going to grow as a person while I'm there. And so I think it's the role of us on campus to help them understand when they have to take the classes that this doesn't tie to my major or this doesn't do that, that we create more meaningful experiences. And so for some, I have no idea. And many of us didn't know. And so when we get there, how do we help them make that same growth process as well?
That's great. So the panel's done a really terrific job, as I'm seeing in the screen, about maybe painting where we are and the many things that we do and the areas that we have to grow. Our final question today is, what about this thing called the enrollment cliff? Suzanne, we've heard a lot about our success on the numbers, but we also know nationally there is a thought that there will be an enrollment cliff. So could you start us off by talking about how we prepare for that moment? And then rest of the panelists, I want you thinking about if it came for the University of Arkansas, if we had a cliff, does it change anything that we've talked about today? Suzanne.
We started preparing for the cliff 5 to 6 years ago, when Nathan Graw's book came out, Demographics and the Demand for Higher Education. And our enrollment services team, we spent 2 days. We got off, well, we didn't get off campus, but we went to Ellis for a couple of days. That's what we're responsible citizens, with our resources. But anyway, and we just read that book and picked that apart. Nathan Graw really alerted universities across the country to this coming issue that the Great Recession caused. So in 2008, people didn't have as many babies, as they had previously, and of course, 17 years later, this is an issue for us. But it wasn't just 2008, 2009, 2010. It's going to be an issue for the COVID group as well. And Nathan Graw talked about how universities should look at their state numbers differently. And so we're looking at Arkansas and what's going to happen in 26, 27, 28, 29. We're going to see an overall drop in college students, in students graduating from high school and going to college, a drop of about 15%. That's pretty rough. Whereas Texas will see an increase of 4%. Right? And so we have a healthy pipeline in some surrounding states. We're looking at other cities like Atlanta, where they have a very healthy growth projection. And so we're looking at that. The next year we read his second book, or it was the year after, The Agile College, where he basically says, numbers do not dictate your future. And we believe that those numbers are not our destiny and that we are doing things now to be cliff resistant. And so I'm hoping that we will get through this cliff without seeing a significant decline in students on our campus.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts on how those changing demographics, dynamics, numbers affect student success?
Well, it affects, potentially everything. And I know that when I meet with Ann, I don't know that we've not considered it in a single meeting, because everything that leadership does today has some potential impact on tomorrow. And so, I look at, let's take, for example, housing. We need beds, but do we go out and we build another housing unit when we know the cliff is coming? There's a calculus here. We're trying to decide how to approach the now without endangering the potential economic life and reality of the university tomorrow. We're not just working for today. Whether we're in these seats or not, we care deeply about the University of Arkansas, and we want to leave it better than we have it now. And that cliff is there, and it's impossible for me not to think about it when we do our planning. And so it has a profound impact. That's why I need better retention rates and graduation rates, because again, all of that helps hedge against a drop. I could make comments about Texans, but I'm not, because it'll get me in trouble, I'm sure. But I'm from Texas, just remember that. And we'll leave it at that.
We won't say maybe you are a Texan? I don't know.
I'm not a Texan anymore.
I know that.
resent that comment. I'm an Arkansan. I've been here almost 24 years, so I think that qualifies me.
Yeah, you have your HOG credentials.
Thank you.
Without a
I
doubt,
appreciate
without
it.
a doubt. I think the other thing that I hear in your answer, though, is that even though the finances may change, the students don't. The methodology for student success doesn't. And that cliff resistance goes to that retention, that graduation, that sense of belonging.
But it's the cost issue, though, Margaret. That's where, that's a huge part of this.
Yeah.
As Leslie said, well, we've got students who can't afford to be here. And if we're not careful, we're going to have to increase tuition and fees more than we, probably have to from just a basis of inflation because of that cliff. And so it is a critical student success consideration as we look towards the future.
Absolutely. And it also highlights the unique role of public education for access and for society to have educated people making the future decisions. And I think to wrap up, what I heard today was really amazing. Amazing work that's happened. Trevor, thank you for bringing us through the last 10 years, and for you, Provost Martin, telling us kind of how we're expanding that lens. The complexity, the data analysis, 116 points, the science around learning and engagement, all really help our campus think about what does it mean to be successful as a student? What kind of lives are we trying to launch? And I would also say, again, one of the things I heard most was about that ethical responsibility that we have, again, as a public institution, to the people of Arkansas and beyond, to make sure that we are figuring out and supporting people in going on a meaningful life path. And that for some, that's 4 years. Sometimes it's 8 years. It depends. And a lot of this is a lawyerly answer. It depends. But we are a community. That's the other thing I've taken away from today, whether you're stopping at the Union to ask a family, hey, can I help you find something? When they're touring campus and just thinking about the possible, or you're chatting with that grad student who's feeling down about a grade or being ABD and not being able to write, that it's that time that we take to support one another that's really important to student success, and it takes all of it. So we're really looking forward to thinking about what all this means in terms of strategic next steps. I really appreciate that last question in the comments about the cliff and what that means financially, but also for our success. I want to remind everybody on Friday, March 17th, we'll have our third of 3 town halls. the employer of choice, and Bordelon will be leading us in that discussion. Similarly, we will want you to submit your questions. I thank everybody who is listening remotely today for submitting questions in advance. I know this, I'm thrilled to be at the University of Arkansas, and so much of that is because of our students. And so for our students who are out there listening today and asking questions, we got you. Thank you all.